Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the MSP Online Marketing Podcast. I am your host, Chad Lyons, and this is going to be a good episode. I know it's kind of weird for me to be saying that myself, but I'm really excited for it. In this episode, we're going to talk about how you can retain more of your customers, improve your customer relationships, and ultimately get more revenue. You know, it's funny, when I was looking over my notes for this episode, I was worried that I wouldn't have enough content to turn this really into like a full episode. And I was kind of kicking myself for not just tacking it on to last week's episode, which was about building a 5-star reputation. But once I got writing, it was like the floodgates opened. And I realized that I really do have a lot to say about this. In fact, I think this is probably our longest episode to date. And I'm going to just be open and honest with you guys. I think it's because this is an area where I really want to improve as well. And so as I was writing the script, I had this realization that I'm really writing it for me. Now, I hope that you will learn something too, and I believe that you will. But it was like, this is such a great refresher for me. And there's things that I'm going to talk about where I can improve also, and my business can improve. So when I say that it's a joy talking to you today, I really mean that. And I always mean that. But today it's really special. Before we get started though, follow us on social media. Seriously. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And if you're like, Chad, that's a lot. Come on, do we really have to follow you on all those platforms? The answer is yes. But if you don't want to, that's fine too. Just choose one or two of your favorite platforms and follow us there. If I was going to make a personal recommendation, I would say to follow us on YouTube and Instagram. We post a lot of stuff on YouTube that we really just don't post anywhere else. So if you don't follow us on YouTube, then you're going to be missing out on that. And Instagram has a good assortment of what we're posting elsewhere. So between YouTube and Instagram, you're going to be getting probably 80 to 90% of the content that we put out. And if you really don't want to miss anything, then go to www.epoet.com and sign up for our newsletter. When you do that, you'll get an email once a week from me. I give you all the links to all of our content, including the blog, and you also get a little personal message from me. And honestly, isn't that what you really want? Just more chat in your life? All right, enough of this. Let's get started. Like I said, last week, we talked about reputation management, and I pounded into your heads the fact that reputation management starts with great customer service. Today, I'm going to dive a little bit more into that idea. I'm going to teach you a little bit about how customer relationships work, kind of from a high level and from that businesses serving businesses perspective. And then we're going to talk about how you can efficiently and effectively measure your customer satisfaction and use that to improve your business and ultimately increase your revenue. Now, there's a few things to know about this episode right off the bat. First, just like some of the other episodes in this season, this is a little bit outside the scope of SEO. That doesn't mean that it's not important. In fact, it's incredibly important. What it does mean is that if you're sitting there all episode waiting for me to bring it all back under the SEO umbrella, well, you're going to be disappointed. That being said, customer satisfaction is a key piece of your reputation, and online reputation is a part of SEO. So I guess if you're wondering how this all ties back to SEO, that's it right there. Second, in this episode, I'm going to be talking pretty specifically about service-based business-to-business companies. This is, of course, the MSP Online Marketing Podcast, and so the information is geared towards MSPs. However, this might also be useful for businesses like commercial electricians or plumbers, proprietary equipment vendors, ISPs, consultant coaches, software vendors, SaaS, etc. Basically, if you serve business clients, this will be right up your alley. Does that mean that if you don't fall into any of those categories, this isn't going to be worth listening to? No, that's not what it means. I always try to present these ideas in such a way that they can be applied to a wider range of businesses. So if you don't fall into any of those categories that I just pointed out, then just think about how you can apply these principles to your business in particular. The last thing I want to mention is that a lot of my thoughts and ideas in this episode were highly influenced by the TSIA. What is the TSIA? They are the Technology and Services Industry Association. They put out a lot of content that is geared towards tech companies, and it's just phenomenal. Honestly, they do a great job. No, I'm not sponsored by them or anything like that, but but I do have to give credit where credit is due. And if you like this episode and you find it interesting and you want more of this type of content, which is maybe more business focused and less marketing in particular, I highly recommend checking them out. And I'm going to take back what I just said. I said that this isn't marketing in particular, but if you have a good grasp of marketing, then you know that customer service is part of marketing. So I take that back. Moving on though, TSIA, they're relatively easy to find. Just go to www.tsia.com and poke around a little bit, sign up for a free account, and you'll find some good stuff there. All right, I know this is kind of a long-winded introduction, so let's jump right in. To start off, let's talk about the number one non-SEO reason that customer satisfaction is so important: revenue. Let me share a story with you, and this will probably sound familiar. A B2B service business starts a year with 100% ARR. That's annual recurring revenue. The total amount of recurring revenue that they can expect from existing clients throughout the next year. So you start off with 100% ARR, but then a few things happen. On average, you lose about 9.5% of that ARR to customer churn. On average, you lose 8.7% to downselling. So customers that go from a higher cost option to a lower cost option. You gain about 1% via cross-selling services or products, and you gain about 2.1% via upselling. So if you've been following the math, what do you end up with at the end of the year? You end up with 84.8% of what you started out with. That's a total loss of 14.2%. That's not great. In fact, if you have a small number of clients or a smaller profit margin, that can be pretty catastrophic. Of course, this kind of assumes that you're not making sales, and of course you are. And so you can lose that 14% year over year, but still grow because you're making it up in new sales, which is something we're kind of skirting around that fact here. And so I just wanted to make sure that we acknowledge that. But what we're going to talk about is how can you stop that reduction in ARR, or at least slow it down a little bit. By now, you guys should know what's coming next. You need a system in place. And if you've been listening to this podcast for a little while, you know that I love systems. Now, I'm not talking about having some sort of system that makes it hard for clients to cancel or anything like that. We all know companies like that, and none of us like them. Don't do that. No, what I'm alluding to is a system where you can capture and act on relevant, meaningful, actionable customer feedback. Last week, I gave you a very simple system for asking customers for feedback. If that feedback is positive, I said to ask for a review. And if it's negative, then I said that you need to try and fix the issue. Now, that's a very simple but effective solution, and it's sufficient if you're trying to improve your online reputation. But if you're trying to stop that year-over-year decrease in existing ARR, then you need a little bit of a higher level view. You need to understand what's going on at a greater scale with your customers. There are two ways that you can measure customer satisfaction. First is the quantitative measurements. These are things like your KPIs, key performance indicators, your adoption rates, your consumption analytics, etc. It's the hard data that you can put into a spreadsheet or a data frame and come up with some analytics for. Most business owners understand the quantitative measures, and so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on that. The second way, however, are the qualitative measurements. Now, these can be a little bit more difficult to measure. To an extent, this is what your reviews are. They allow you to get inside the head of the customers in a way and understand their experience. But the truth is that reviews are often just not very helpful from a customer satisfaction standpoint. They're pretty binary. Either the customer is happy or they're not. Sure, you can get 4 stars instead of 5, but there may or may not even be a stated reason connected to that. The better way to measure customer sentiment is through customer satisfaction surveys. I know I can already hear you groaning. Customer surveys suck, and statistically, between 60 and 80% of us just ignore them. But there's ways that you can improve that. And having a great customer satisfaction survey, or rather having the results of those surveys, can give you the tools you need to improve your processes and better serve your customers. Ultimately, doing that is going to lead to greater customer retention and more revenue. There are two types of customer satisfaction surveys that I'm going to talk about. They are non-intrusive and can really provide some good insights. They are, first, transactional customer surveys. So let's say that you send out a tech to serve one of your clients. They go out, they do the job and fix the issue, and then they come back. Maybe later that day or the day after, the customer gets a survey where you're asking questions specifically about that call. And the goal with this is that you want to know how satisfied they were with that experience overall. You ask questions like, was the service ticket responded to in a timely manner? Was the issue resolved completely? Was the issue resolved in a timely manner? Was the technician professional, courteous, and knowledgeable? One of my favorite companies that I think does this really well is Namecheap. Now, if you've never heard of Namecheap, they do web hosting, emails, domain, VPN, and that sort of stuff. Web services, basically. They do it at a great price, and their customer service is second to none. I've used them several times, and any time that I've had an issue, their texts have been available right away via the live chat feature. They know what they're doing and they're able to help me. And I'll be honest, sometimes I'm pretty sure that I can figure something out on my own, but I contact them instead. And I do that for two reasons. First, I know that they'll help me do it the right way, so they can help me avoid any gotchas or other issues that I may not anticipate. And I've been working with technology for 12 years, so that's significant to me. The other reason is because it's fast. I could spend 10 to 15 minutes researching an issue and then be able to fix it. Or I can reach out to them and they can help me fix it in 5 minutes. See, it's a no-brainer. And after that service has been rendered, they always ask me to fill out a quick survey. And you know what? I do it every single time. They're doing a great job and I want them to know that. So that's a transactional customer survey. You provide a service or product, and then you follow up to ask about how that experience went. The second type of customer satisfaction survey is the annual relationship survey. Now, I love this one too. This gives you a chance to touch base with your long-term customers and have a candid discussion about how you're doing. It's easy to get complacent with our long-term customers, isn't it? As long as we can get that check every month, we kind of assume that everything is fine. And if they have any issues, they'll let us know. This can be especially true if those customers are fairly big businesses, in which case that might be the relationship they want. They need someone available if they need something, but otherwise they just kind of want you to stay out of their hair. But there's a dark side to that too, because if you're not communicating effectively with these customers, it's entirely possible that you're dropping the ball in little or big ways and not even realizing it. And that can silently erode that relationship over time. Then you get a call one day and they're canceling service and you're completely blindsided. Here you thought everything was fine. The whole while, they're just getting more and more frustrated until one of your competitors shows up, offers them the world and amazing customer service, and the next thing you know, you've lost the account. I've never lost an account that way, knock on wood, but I've had my own issues as a client of someone else. So I've been on the other side of that, where providers were just not meeting my company's needs. And I had every intention of talking to them about it. But as a business owner, sometimes it's hard to find at the time. Other things just keep coming up. And then a new sales guy comes in. He has an objectively better offering. So the choice seems like a no-brainer. Then after I canceled, the old provider called me up and said, why didn't you let us know you needed that? We do that too. And we do it way better than those other guys. Well, sorry, man, but you had your chance. Don't let that be you. And one of the ways that you can make sure that's not you is by touching base with your clients from time to make sure that their needs are being met. Doing this in person or over the phone via an account manager is a great way to do this. And doing it that way, you may want to do this more than once a year, right? However, this annual relationship survey is also very helpful. It's less intrusive and it gives you actual metrics, which we'll talk about in just a second. These metrics you can use to evaluate that relationship. So what do you ask about in an annual relationship survey? Well, it's hard because you want to get a good 1,000-foot view of what's going on, but you want to do it in as few questions as possible, right? Your customers are busy. You don't want to be taking up a whole lot of their time. So a good place to start is by having a list of just a few things to focus on. For example, overall satisfaction with services, satisfaction with products that you might provide, ask about how easy is it to work with you, how is the sales process, how is billing, And when you focus on these 4 or 5 areas, you can keep the survey as unintrusive as possible while also getting a somewhat well-rounded idea of what the customer experience is like for them. And that's actually something else I want to talk about, is how to increase the response rate. I said earlier that 60 to 80% of us don't respond to surveys. And that's true. The average response rate is somewhere between 20 and 40%. However, there are things that you can do to improve that. I encourage you all to really think about what you can do, something that is unique to your business. The more unique and customized this process is, the better. But I will share some ideas to help you get started. The first thing is make it easy. Don't make them sign up for an account or any nonsense like that. Make it as easy and frictionless as possible. If you're sending out the survey invitation via email, let them just click on it and go from there. Don't put a whole lot of other things that in there that are going to trip them up. Also, keep it short. It should be less than 2 minutes to complete. 2 minutes. So try to limit the survey to only a few questions, maybe 4 or 5 questions even. Number 3, consider providing an incentive. I've gotten plenty of $10 Amazon gift cards for filling out customer surveys. Offer an incentive, preferably tailored to your business and your customers. When you do this, you show that you really do appreciate and value their feedback. An important note, for heaven's sake, don't tie the incentive to leaving a quote unquote good review. No. I've seen that in the wild. That is just so counterproductive to everything we've been talking about, because what you want to get from this is genuine, candid feedback. And if you're trying to incentivize positive feedback, then that's what you're going to get, but it may or may not be true. And so by offering the incentive simply for the feedback, whether it be good or bad, you leave the door open to be able to allow your customers to report more honestly on the experiences that they've had. Number 4, send a reminder. You don't want to be annoying about it, but it is okay to send a reminder email after a few days if you haven't heard back. Whether you send 1 reminder email, 2 reminder emails, that's up to you, but you want to be aware of the idea of toxicity. Toxicity is where you are trying too hard to communicate with someone that does not want to be communicated to. And so if you're sending emails day after day after day, you're going to sour the relationship just because you're going to come off as nagging, and it's not going to be good. So that was number 4, send a reminder. And number 5, lastly, remember to thank them for giving you their feedback. This relationship should be important to you, and you need to let your customers know that. It really reminds me of some of the other relationships that we have in life, relationships with our spouses, children, business partners, parents, whatever the case may be. It reminds me of those relationships because a lot of the principles apply. I think the most important relationship that I have is with my wife, and I try to think quite often about where that relationship's at and how is the communication, and how is, for lack of a better way of putting it, how is that experience for her of being my wife? Are there things that I need to be doing better? Or do I need to spend more time with her? Do I need to communicate better? And these types of questions and these principles, they translate into business as well. When you're thinking about your clients, you can think similarly about how they're experiencing this relationship. Do they feel listened to? Do they feel like their needs are being met? Is there any place where you need to step up? By viewing it through that lens, it can help you to be a little bit more personal. It's not just a transaction relationship where you provide something and they pay you for it. There's other dynamics and nuances to it as well that really do get into that interpersonal realm. Because the individual that you're working with, although you're working business to business, essentially it boils down to person, because you or your account manager, whoever you have in that position, is working directly with a representative from that country, that company. And so that relationship and that communication is important. And so you need to treat it that way. The last thing I want to talk about is using the customer feedback to improve your services overall. Getting feedback is great. Getting feedback is great, but if you don't do anything with it, then you're really missing out on a powerful opportunity to improve your business. In a recent TSIA webinar, they talked about this topic a little bit, how to use customer feedback to improve service. They gave 4 steps, and it was so good that I'm just going to share them with you. And again, all credit to them. TSIA, www.tsia.com. They have a lot of great resources, and these next 4 steps are directly from them. I am going to expound on it a little bit, but the basics are from them. Step 1, make sure that everyone in the company, especially your frontline folks, the customer service reps, account reps, and especially your technicians, make sure they understand how important customer satisfaction is and what good customer service means. You really need to have a good shared definition of good customer service. Everyone needs to be on the same page with that. Of course, every individual has their own style of talking and working with customers. Some people are very professional and serious. Some people are very personable and they like to really get to know the customers. Sometimes they might even share jokes or laugh with them or learn about their family. And both approaches are okay. They're fine. But when it comes to the metrics such as what's an appropriate response time, or what does it mean to say that an issue is fully resolved, everyone needs to be on the same page. And there can be variance there. I've worked in a few environments where the definition of done was not clearly defined. And so someone might say that something was done when in reality there was a few more steps. It was probably functional and it might be 80 to 90% of the way done, but it still needed to be touched. And that was their definition of done. And it's fine that they have that definition as long as everybody agrees on it. For me, my definition of done means that you're hands off, you're done. It functions on its own. It's 100% done. There's nothing to clean up. There's nothing else to touch. It's done. And I think that there's some validity and some truth to both approaches, but you need to decide on that and you need to agree on that as a team, and everyone needs to be on the same page. So that's step 1, is just making sure that everybody understands what it means to provide good customer service and how important that is. Step 2 is to track performance and discuss it with your team on a consistent basis. This means talking about the transactional customer surveys. That's probably what you're going to be talking about most of the time. And you don't necessarily need to name names. In my mind, I'm picturing these maybe stand-up meetings that you have on a daily or weekly basis, and you can review some of the feedback you get. I worked with a company a few years ago that they did this on a daily basis. And so every day we would we'd meet together in the conference room, and as part of that meeting, it was about an hour-long meeting, and for the first 15 minutes or so, it was about customer feedback. And at the time, I was not engaged directly with customers, and my mind frame was a little bit different too. And I'll tell you that those meetings were so boring to me. Hearing the customers stuff, it just didn't matter to me at the time. And I kind of have to laugh at myself because I was so myopic. I was just focused on what I was doing and didn't really have the bigger view. And that was my fault. That was just my mind frame. But now I can look back and appreciate that, because what it was doing is it was teaching those people who were working with the customers what the customers were experiencing. And when you go over that, like I said, you don't need to name names, and it's probably maybe better if you don't sometimes, but you can talk about what went wrong, and then you can talk about how to turn that around or how you can do better next time. And then you can also talk about what went really well. And in this portion of our meeting, we did name names, and we said, this individual did a great job. They got this type of feedback that these people were really happy with them. And, we can applaud them all together. So we were able to celebrate those wins. But however you decide to implement this, let it be an ongoing discussion. And like I said, you need to make this something that you're discussing on a regular basis with your teams. So that's step 2. Step 3 is nice and straightforward. You need to have a budget available to address the factors that will improve customer satisfaction. Let me say that again. You need to have a budget available. And this budget needs to be available for you to address the factors or fix the issues, do those things that will improve customer satisfaction. If you don't have that, it's a standstill. It's a non-starter. If you don't have if you don't have the resources to implement those changes that need to be implemented, then you're dead in the water. So that's step 3. Step 4, you should align your employee incentives with customer satisfaction. Now, this is something best done on a one-on-one basis. So it's not like those meetings where you're talking about customer feedback. This is a one-on-one type thing. But if you have an employee who's just knocking it out of the ballpark when it comes to customer service, maybe their quarterly bonus can reflect that. And if you have someone who's really struggling, maybe you can put together an improvement plan that includes the possibility of incentives if improvement occurs, if they're able to improve. And really how you handle this is up to you. Something that I think is important. Well, the main thing here that I'm trying to communicate is that you're rewarding good performance and then you're incentivizing improvement as it's needed. One thing that I do not recommend doing is decreasing a stated incentive based on poor performance. For example, let's say Angela's Christmas bonus is usually $1,000. For heaven's sakes, don't tell her it's been cut down to $500 because of her customer service rating. If you've already stated that a bonus is this much, or if there's I'm having trouble thinking of the word, if it's been done before, a precedent, if there's a precedent for it, then don't go in there and start making changes. That's death to morale. If you have stated incentives, it's usually best to leave them alone or just get rid of them altogether for everybody and then implement this new plan. I'm a little iffy on that too. How you do this is going to be up to you. Just be extremely careful and tactful about any changes that you make to stated incentives. Okay, so that's that. And that's actually it. And the takeaways are, number one, you're losing revenue due to losing customers. That is a fact for all businesses. It doesn't matter how amazing you are. And I know that you're amazing, but it's just a fact of doing business is that you lose customers year over year. So that's number one. Number two, you can stop or at least reduce that. You do that, number three, by collecting customer feedback. And number four, by using that feedback to improve your customer service in a meaningful way. It sounds so simple when we list it out that way, doesn't it? We've talked about way more than just that, but really what's at the heart of this and what we've been discussing are those four things. And this is a powerful topic because as you do those things, you'll be able to retain more customers, improve those customer relationships, and ultimately get more revenue. So that's it for this week. I hope you learned something. I hope that you'll apply what you've learned, and I especially hope that you have a fantastic week.